and welcome back. Last week we have dealt with arrays in C programming and we have saw the first data structure. It can be of any type and we have also dealt with the variants like 1D array, 2D array. We thought today why not discuss about some problems regarding arrays. And there are many varieties of problems we can have in arrays. We are going to discuss some most popular ones. Have you heard about something like searching? Searching any element in array? Yes, then we can do that in many ways. The first way that we are going to learn is linear search. What is linear search? As the name suggests, we can traverse along an array linearly. So an array is a linear data structure, right? Let us have 5 values here. 3, 4, 5 values. Suppose -1, 0, -7, 11, 100. And if we want to search this element, this is present at index. Let me change the color. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it is present at index 3. If we want to search this element, how can we do that? We have to traverse from every index, like from 0 up to 4, and we will check whether any of the element is matching with our target. So here our target is 11. So this is our target, and we will check whether any element we are visiting is matching with the target. If it matches, then we are going to break out of the loop and print that simply. Otherwise, we are going to say that it is not found. That's how simple it is. So let us implement it. We have made a program for that. Here is it, and we call it linear search. Now don't focus on this part O in time. We are going to explain it after we discuss how the program runs. So here we have an array of size 100. It's the maximum size it can take. Then we have the variable that is storing the target value, search. Okay, now we have entered the number of elements in an array. We have asked the user to enter the number of elements, that means the size of the array. Then we have taken so many integers from the user one by one. After that, to enter the target variable, that means what you want to search. Once we have got all these things, so up to here everything is concerned with the inputs. After getting all these things, we are running a for loop. We can also run a while loop from 0 up to the size -1, that means the maximum index, and we are searching whether, and we are checking whether the current element, that is array of that I index, is matching with the target value that is stored in search. If it matches, that means we have found it. So just print that element and break out of it. So we are breaking out of the loop because we have got the result. If we do not find, then what will happen? Can you think it? Let us pause the video and think. If we do not find an element, suppose it is not present in the array, then what will happen? If you found it right, then congratulations, I will reach the value n. If we do not find any time for any index, this condition is getting true. That means the element is not at all present in the array. So I will increment, keep on incrementing, and finally I will become n, and this loop will break. Once the loop will break, because of I getting incremented, it will reach the size of the array, and when I reaches the size of the array, it indicates that we have not found the element, so we print that it's not present. Let us try and test this program. We give size 4 and give some peculiar values, -11, 0, 13, and suppose 23. We want to search. Okay, we have, sorry, so 0, now 13, we are going to do a blunder. 23, yes. Now we want to search for, suppose, 0. Now it is present at the second position and the index is 1, so we get that 0 is present at position 2 and index 1. Fine, it's working properly. Now let us give a value that is not at all present in the array. So if this time we give, suppose, 7 as the size, we give 1, 3, 10, -7, -5, then 3 again, 4. We can have repetitions as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, another value, 100. Now we want to search for an element that is not at all present. So 2 is not present here. So if we try to search for 2, we get 2 isn't present in the array. So this program deals with this case very well. Now comes to this point, why we call this thing O n time. Remember, we said that we have to run throughout the length of the array, and by running throughout the length of the array, I mean I am running the program n times. So my operations are going on n times. It's dependent upon the size of the input. So if the size of the input is n, I am doing calculations n times. So it's a linear relationship between my input and the execution time. So in this type of scenario, we call that the program takes linear ordered time. And this capital O, we will learn more about this if you have learned about time complexities of programs. But this capital O stands for the worst scenario. So in the worst scenario, what is the worst scenario for linear search? You are not finding the element, right? If the target is not at all present, then the program will take maximum time because it will go through all the elements of the array. In that case, the time taken by you is the size of the array. So if the size of the array is 5, then you are doing checking 5 times, and after that you are breaking out of the loop and saying it's not present. So that's what is meant by this capital O. It means that in the worst case also you will take linear time, not more than that. So it gives us an upper bound of the execution time. That's all what we mean by this big O notation. It's a measure of the complexity of a program. There is a betterment to this algorithm. This linear search takes O in time, but there is a betterment of this algorithm when we have all the elements sorted. That is called binary search. And before going through the code, we will see how it works, and then we come back to the editor. So go to the next page. What is binary search? The term binary signifies that we have to do something with 2. So here we do something division by 2. Suppose we have an array that is sorted, and this is very important for binary search. The one dependency of binary search is that it cannot work if your array is haphazard. So if I cannot do binary search on something like -1, again 0, and then so there is an increasing trend. Now if I destroy this trend by writing something less than 0 like -3, then this is an array which is neither in ascending order nor in descending order. So if there is no order in an array, binary search will fail. So that is one condition, that for binary search we must have a strictly monotonous function, like either completely increasing or completely decreasing. That is the condition for binary search. Once that condition is met, then what we do, let us see. Suppose we have 4 elements in an array, simply 1 2 3 4. Suppose 1 2 3 4, and their indices are 0 1 2 3. We want to search this 2, so we will find it at this index 1. The logic of binary search is that we keep 2 variables to check 2 endpoints, the start point and the end point. Like here the start point is the first index, and there is something called high. This is another variable which keeps track of the last index. So here the last index is 3. So low is 0 and high is 3. So this is the starting point of binary search. We define the range where we are going to search for an element from low to high, and we are sure that we are going to find that element somewhere between the 0 and 3. So we have decided this search space. So that is the first task we do in binary search. The second thing is that we define another variable which is midpoint of these two. So mid is 0 plus 3 by 2. So it's as simple as mathematics, simple mean. 0 plus 3 by 2 will give us 1 point something, 1.5, but it's an integer, so we understand that it will give us 1. This 1 is the index, so mid is pointing to this index. Currently mid is having 1 as the value. We are checking if array of the middle element, if array of mid is our target. If array of mid is our target, then print it. So in this case, in this situation, in this scenario, we have got that array of mid is our target, right? Array of 1 is 2 and 2 was our target. So we have got our target, so let's break out of the loop and print that 2 is the required value. Case 2, there is another case. Suppose we don't find something at the mid in the first instance. Same array 1 2 3 4. This time our target is different. Suppose we are searching for 3. If we search for 3, then as we have discussed, this was the low, LOW, this was high, HIGH, and this was mid. Mid was 1, right? First time mid was 1. Now we find that array of mid is 2, which is not our desired target. Target was 3. In this scenario, we can do two things. When we don't find array of mid is matching with the target, we can do two things. What is the intuition? You can pause the video and think what we can do if we don't find target at this position. Right, we resume. If you thought that, okay, let us deal with the values. The values has a significance, right? This is 2, this is 3, and we know the values. Array of mid is the value, so we have access to the value. So why not compare with the values? If array of mid, that means here 2, is less than our target, which is 3 here, that means my answer will be somewhere towards the right hand side, right? My answer is towards the right hand side of 2. It can never be on the left hand side. This is the intuition that we derive. Why we can derive so? Because our array is sorted, right? It is in ascending order, and we can say confidently that anything greater than 2 is always present on the right hand side of 2. On the other hand, if we have landed on 4, suppose you landed on 4, then you will say that my target is lesser than current value, so I have to search on the left hand side. So these two intuitions are very clear in binary search. How to search on the right hand side? We change the search space. Search range is from low to high, so why not change the values of low to high to change the range of searching. So now we will change low to 2. Why? Because we are not interested on the left hand side. We know the answers is somewhere in the right hand side. So what we do here is, let us clarify. Again, make the boxes 1, 2, 3 and 4. This is our target, T for target, and these are the index. Index is very important here, 0, 1, 2 and 3. So this was our first mid value, M for mid. This was our first low value, this was our first high value. We found that the current mid value was less than our target. So let us proceed rightwards. So we shift the entire range, the low one, from 0 to 2. So now new low is 2. This is our search space. So we reject this part. This portion is rejected. And our search space has reduced by a factor of 2, right? Now we are searching on an array of size 2. Earlier we were searching on an array of size 4. That's why we say that in this process we don't take linear time. We take something like, instead of searching for 4, next time we search for 2, next time we search for size 1 array. In this way, the size of searching keeps on diminishing by a factor of 2. And if we keep track of this series, like first of all 4 plus 2 plus 1, and in general n plus n by 2 plus n by 2 square, plus in this way ultimately we result to 1. This series is logarithmic series, so the evaluation of this series will give you log n base 2. It's something purely mathematics. Just remember this result, that this type of series, whenever you get iterations for n times, next time you iterate for n by 2 times, like we have done here. We are searching for array of size 2, then we will iterate over an array of size 1, because we are dividing by 2 every time, right? So we are taking logarithmic time for calculation. So it is definitely betterment, like n, taking n time is more than log n. So log n is always a better option to choose if we have the facility of a sorted array. Now the problem is not complete yet. We have just reduced the search space from 2 to 3. Repeat the process again. So once we have decided that, let us move towards the right. So we have now our new lows and highs, 1, 2, 3, 4. Our low is at this position, high is at this position, mid was earlier at this position. So let us give dash for the new position, L dash and H dash. Suppose new mid will be L dash plus H dash by 2, right? M dash will be this thing. What is this value? 0, 1, 2, 3. So 2 plus 3 by 2. What is 2 plus 3 by 2? 2 plus 3 by 2 is 5 by 2, that means 2. It's an integer. So this position is marked by new mid value. Now we see that our target is matching with the current value. So we break out of the loop and we say that we have found the element, right? We have found the element. This is how binary search works. It divides your search space every time by a factor of 2. It cuts the array and says that either this half is useless or this half is useless, depending upon the intuition that we have discussed, greater than, less than. So what is the edge case here? What is the edge case? If no element is found, if no target is found anywhere in the array, what will happen then? So if we are searching for something that is not at all present, 2, 3, 4, and suppose we are searching for something 5, then as usual we start, let us do dry run from 0 index as low and high as size -1. So this index is 3, this is high, and this is the, sorry, this is 2, this is 1, this is the mid, this is the mid value. we see that the array element 3 is less than our target. So we reject the left portion and we go towards the right. So now this low will become high, both are same. So high is also 2 and my low is also 2. What is the new mid value? New mid is low plus high by 2, that means 2 plus 2 by 2, which gives you 2. So my low, mid, high, everything is 2. So my array value is also 4. Is this value less than the target? Yes, it is less than the target. That means I need to reject the left hand portion and I need to go towards the right. So now my low will become current mid value, what is 2. So it is one side right of mid. So earlier we jumped from mid one step towards the right. This time as well we'll jump one step after mid. So what is our one step after mid? 2 plus 1. Now this takes us out of the array. Okay, so whenever there is an intuition, whenever we cross this condition, whenever we get this condition, that is my low is exceeding my high, that means I have come towards a situation when I'm not finding the element. Okay, so in that case just break out of the loop, otherwise you will face some errors during runtime. Okay, so that is the edge case when we don't find an element. We can also see this example in this way. Not only every time deleting the left hand portion, we can also delete the right hand portion. Let us take a situation like that. Suppose we have 2, 3 and 4 and we want to search for 1. This is our target. So in that case low starts from 0 index and high is 2, mid is 1. Current element, is it greater than the size? Yes, it is greater than the target, right? So if it is greater than the target, then delete the right hand side. The answer cannot be on the right hand side. It has to be somewhere on the left hand side. So high will modify this time. This time high becomes mid minus 1. So high goes here. So this is our new high. If this is our new high, then what is the new mid? The new mid is again low plus high by 2. That means 0 plus 0 by 2, which gives you 0. So what is the current element? 2. Is 2 greater than 1? Yes, it is still greater than 1. So answer cannot be on the right hand side. Delete the entire right hand side. Now proceed towards the left. So now this what to say, the high will become mid minus 1. So now it means 0 minus 1 and high becomes minus 1. So again we are getting this condition, low is greater than high, right? Low is 0 and high is minus 1. So 0 is greater than minus 1. So when we reach this condition, we are going to break out of the loop. That's how simple binary search is. Let us try out this in the editor again. So here is the binary search code. This is all related to user input. You have seen in the previous program, we have taken the size and then the number of all the integers one by one. After taking input, we say what is the value you want to find and we store it in the search variable. Here we have declared, like instead of low we have declared the first, and instead of high we have mentioned the last. Right here, instead of writing low and high, we can write it first and last. And middle is the mid value, right? Middle is always first plus last by 2. This is the condition as long as first is less than or equal to last. Okay, as long as low, let me write it sideways. So as long as my first or low, okay, first or low is less than equal to my what to say last or high, as long as this situation is valid, I will run. The moment it gets invalid, that means my low is greater than high, or here my first is greater than last, at that time I'm going to break out. So that is what is meant by this condition of while loop. Inside the while loop we can see first is equal to middle plus 1 only when you are getting something less. So if, as I discussed, that if you are getting the current element is less than your target, then we shift towards the right, and for shifting towards the right we change the low value. We do not disturb the right value. Okay, we do not disturb the last value, we only shift the low value, that means the first here. What happens when we find it? So if you find the element, just break out of it, print the element, we have printed it, and then we have broken out of the entire loop. Fine, very straight cut. What means this else? This else means it is neither equal to nor the current element is less than the target. That means the current element is greater than the target. If the current element is greater than the target, means it's just like this situation, target is 1 and our current element is 2. So we reject the right hand side and we update the last element, that means high. So in this case it was h, and in the program we have last. So we'll update last as mid minus 1. So last becomes middle minus 1. That is how we update in binary search. The logic is defined within this while loop, and we complete the while loop here. Every time remember to update the middle, right? Whatever changes you do with first or last, your middle should always be first plus last by 2. Okay, so we do this updation here. So let us write updating the mid value. Updating the mid value, not mid value, it's the mid index. Updating the mid index. Then we check after the loop is over. So here is the end of the while loop. Let us write it here like end loop. So the loop ends here. After that we check that if first is greater than last. When can it happen that first is greater than last? Let us go back to the whiteboard. In this case, that low is greater than high, that means first is greater than last. It means that we have violated the condition. We have not found the element anywhere in the array, and that's why my first is exceeding my last. So whenever this situation happens, it means that I have not found the element, and that's why I printed not found. Let us try this thing. First of all, let me erase this entire things. It's mess. Yes, after we have a clear screen, now we can run it. F11. Yes, no errors, no warnings. Give a number of elements. Suppose 8. 8 elements are there. Haphazard values, but they should be sorted. So minus 9, then we give minus 4, then 0, then 12, then 15, 26. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values, 2 more values, 31 and 100 or 101. Enter the value to find. So we want to find 15. So if we want to track 15, we should get it at the position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's present at the 5th position. So it says that 15 found at position 5, index 4. Very nice. It's working perfectly. Now the other half, that if we don't give an element that is present here. So if we give something that is not present. Number of elements, 5 elements. What are the 5 integers? Suppose 9, 10, 11 and 29 and 51. Suppose something like this. And enter value to find. We want to search something like this time also we want to search for 15, but 15 is not present here. It says not found. 15 isn't present in the list. That's also 100% correct. So now you have seen how this thing works, and it's an optimization of the linear search in the sense that it takes much less time, logarithmic time. It has reduced the time by logarithms. What's next? Something we deal with sorting. Right? We need to sort an element like we have discussed for doing binary search. If you're given an array, the array should be sorted, and by sorted I mean it's either in increasing order or it is arranged in decreasing order. So this is called sorting. Before we go to the code, we have to discuss the theory. There are many methods to sort. So the problem that we have to solve is to sort an array. For solving this problem, many people have found many methods, and this is since this course is not focused on data structures and algorithms, we cannot cover all the different methods of sorting, and there are many other functions, not only searching and sorting. That is not sufficient to discuss here because we have a limited time, and this is nothing to do with C programming. It is a general concept that can be done with any language. So we are going to just touch upon these topics because we cannot leave them. So the first sorting that we are going to learn is the simplest one, selection sort. Selection sort. Then we will see what is called bubble sort. That's enough for us. Bubble and selection sort. There are many other sorts, like you'll find quick sort, merge sort, heap sort, radix sort, and they are increasing in their complexities. So we're not going to discuss them right now. First of all, what is selection sort? To understand selection sort, we should take an example. Suppose 213 is such an array where we find the number is tending to decrease, but after that it again increases. So if we draw something like a mountain type curve, so if this is the y-axis, we have 1, we have 2 here, we have 3 here. The mountain goes like this. First point is here, second point is here, third point is here. So the curve is first decreasing, then increasing. So whenever we get such kind of vertex, like either decreasing or increasing in between, so in that case we have to sort the array. Once the array is sorted, it will look like a steep slope. This is a monotonic curve. it keeps on increasing. Okay, strictly monotonic curve. And similarly, if something is decreasing strictly without any such vertices in between, then we say that is also sorted but in descending order. So suppose we have points like this. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and the points are along this line, then it's always increasing. We have an array 1, 2, 3. If we have the reverse array 3 to 1, then we have points here 3, 2, and then a point at 1. So if we draw the line here with a different color, then this is a decreasing array. So we have 3 to 1, the order is decreasing, but still it is sorted. So this type of curves are called monotonic. They keep on strictly increasing or decreasing. But we should not have such points, otherwise it's not a sorted array. That's just a different way to visualize in the form of mountains. I prefer that. To understand selection sort, let us have an array 2, 1, 3. It's not sorted. The indices are 0, 1 and 2. What we do, we have a nested loop. Suppose we use for loop. The iterator for it is I. We have an inner for loop. The iterator for it is j. We take a minimum element for each iteration of I as array of I. Okay. Why minimum? Because in every turn our idea is to keep the minimum element at that position. So suppose currently I am at 0th position, I is at 0. So in this iteration I want to keep the minimum element at I. So that's why I am keeping initially minimum as AI. Suppose 2 is the minimum. I don't know what can be the minimum, so in future I can replace it. But for now, since I have the knowledge of only this element, I can keep minimum as 2. Now what I do is that I have to traverse in the remaining array to find whether this is the minimum or there can be a future minimum value. That's why I start j from the right hand side, that means from I plus 1, and I go up to the size minus 1, that means the maximum possible index that I can go. I go with j. What I do, I check whether, suppose j is here, I check whether that element is smaller than minimum. If it is smaller than minimum, I note its index. Suppose I have a variable idx that stores the index. I note that value. When I note that value, when I get that it is less than the minimum. Okay. Otherwise, I keep on moving j unless I reach the end. Once the inner loop is completed, then I swap this minimum value with that index. So suppose here I get 1 which is less than 2. So after this inner loop completes, I will swap 1 and 2. So my array will look like 2 will get replaced with 1 and 1 will get replaced with 2. And why this swapping is necessary? Because if I have found some index where I have got a discrepancy, whenever I'll find something minimum towards the right of I, that means I have got something, you can say, the proof that the array is not sorted. If the array was sorted, something like 1, 2, 3, then whenever I am at present situation, suppose I am presently at 1, this should be the minimum. If I go to 2, then this should be the minimum for any subarray that begins with this and goes up to the end. So if I take a subarray from 2 and go up to the end, then 2 should be the minimum if it is sorted in ascending order. The fact that I am getting another element which is smaller than the minimum tells me that the array is not sorted. So that's why there is a need to change. So that's why there is a need to swap. So after the inner loop gets completed, we swap that minimum with the element that we have got which is less than minimum. This process continues for each and every turn. So first time we have I at 0 and j goes towards the right. Next time we have I at this position. So this is the, let me change the color. So here this is the 0th index, 1st index and the 2nd index. So initially I was here, now I will be here, I will be at 1. So the left hand side is fixed. I am sure that I have got one element in the final array, that is 1 is fixed. Now I don't need to worry with this, so I am searching from here. That's why I is present at 1 and I will run j from the right hand side. That means j will go from 2 to 2 because 2 is the last value. So it will have only one value, that is 2, and we see that 3 is not less than 2. So we no need to change, no need to swap anything. When I reaches the final index, that means that array is already sorted because there is nothing on the right hand side of I, so no need to check for any minimum, and we have got the final answer 1, 2, 3. So this is the way selection sort works. At every step it finds the minimum value and it checks whether it is present in that position. If there is any discrepancy, that means we have a need to swap it with the existing minimum. That is the way we calculate selection sort. For bubble sort, let us take the same example 2, 1 and 3. So we mark the indices 0, 1 and 2, rest of the array. Just the method will change. We are taking the same example so that you can better understand the method. The structure of the loop that we are using is that as before, I is iterator for the outer loop, and for the inner loop we have j as the iterator. Now how we proceed here, we start both from 0, so I is also at 0 and j is also at 0 initially. Now how we proceed with j is the interesting fact here. We check array of j with array of j plus 1. What is the expected thing for increasing order? For increasing order we expect this to happen, right? But we are searching here for discrepancies. So wherever there is a discrepancy, we will swap the elements. So what we do here, we are checking if a of j is greater than a of j plus 1. So if there is a discrepancy, this is the condition of, this is the condition of discrepancy, right? This is the condition of discrepancy. So we are finding where there is some discrepancy in the array. If we find such indices j and j plus 1 between which there is a break of order, then we will swap it to reform to maintain the order of increasing nature. So for that what we do is, whenever we find this, if it happens, then we swap these two elements. That means we swap a of j and this a of j plus 1, and you know how to swap the numbers. Let us try run for this array. So when, let me clear it. So I take eraser and I clear this thing. Okay, it is taking a bit time, but that's not a problem. Yes, this much is enough. Now first time we had 2, 1, 3. Let me take this green pen now. So we saw when j was here, j was at 0, so j was 0, and we saw that j and j plus 1, that means 2 and 1, array of j and array of j plus 1, violated the condition. We have 2 greater than 1 before 1. So this is a violation of increasing order, so we will swap them. So what we do, instead of 2 we make it 1, instead of 1 we make it 2. So we have swapped them. After swapping we move j to here, so j goes here, and we check whether 2 and 3 is maintaining the order. Yes, it is maintaining the order. 2 is less than 3, not a problem. So we skip to the next value of I. Why? Because j has ended. We can't go here, right? This is one important observation. We can't take j towards the last. Why? Because we are checking for j plus 1, and if we try to access j plus 1 from here, it will give us something out of bounds error, right? Out of bounds. So beware of this. Don't take j up to the last element, because then j plus 1 will give me out of bounds. Okay, that is one thing to keep in mind. Now when I goes to the next iteration, that means I takes the value 1. So I is at here, so let me write it clearly. 1 2 3 is the array now. This is 0 1 and 2. I is currently here, so when I is here, then j will always start again from 0, but this time we know that we have got the final element. So whenever we run an iteration in bubble sort, the benefit is that we keep on getting the elements from the right hand side. So we can say after one iteration the final element is fixed. After two iterations, from the right hand side two elements are fixed, so we need not traverse it again and again. That will be redundant task, useless task. Why to traverse something that is never going to show us discrepancy? So that's why we will prevent j, we will restrict j up to these two values. Now will not go with the last value, because we know it is already sorted, so no need to go there again. And that is the benefit, that is the optimal approach we can apply for traversing while using this bubble sort. So what we do, we have 1 2 3 after one iteration, and now I is lying here. We start again checking, is it maintained? Yes, order is maintained, so no need to swap. Now we need not see it again. Why? Because it is already taken care of. After the first iteration we have fixed one value, so no need to go here. I goes to the final position, and again we see whether, now this time we are sure that last two elements, after two iterations last two elements are fixed. They are 100% sure, they will never show any discrepancy, so why to check them again? So j just remains here and it checks whether it is fine or not. Yes, it's fine, no problem, no order broken. So just leave it, no need to swap. So that is, we have our required array in this form. Let us take a complicated example to understand how it's functioning. Okay, without dry run it's difficult to understand how it's working. So let us take something like -7, then we take 15, again we take 0, then we take 1 and -3. If you want to swap this, first let us write the indices 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now take a red pen, and first of all I is here. Now j goes from 0 to this, it checks. Okay, so order is maintained, yes. -7 is less than 15, j goes here. J and j plus 1, so order is maintained, no, order is broken. 15 is greater than 0, let us swap them. 15 becomes 0, 0 becomes 15. Okay, now j is here. 15 and 1, order is broken, let us swap them. 15 becomes 1, 1 becomes 15. J goes here, order is broken, so 15 becomes -3 and -3 becomes 15. Now you see that the maximum value has reached the last place, and that is the desired place for 15. So that is a very good property of bubble sort. After one iteration you get the last element fixed. After two iteration you get two elements from the last fixed in its position. So after ith iteration you will get I elements from the right hand side automatically fixed in their final position. Don't need to shuffle them anymore. Now what about the second iteration? So after first iteration, so this is iteration number, so this is it number. After iteration number 1, our status is -7, 0, 1, -3 and 15. Okay, now what about iteration 2? Then I will be here, and we check j again from 0. So let us start from here. So -7, 0, it is maintained, so go j goes here. 0, 1, it is maintained, yes, 1 is greater than 0, go here, j goes here. Now 1 and -3, so 1 is greater than -3 is violated, so let us swap it. So -3 and it becomes 1. Again j goes here. Now 1 and 15 it's maintained because 1 is less than 15, so it's fine. So after second iteration our status is -7, 0, -3, 1 and 15. Now just have a look that the last two elements have their place. 1 and 15 are the two highest numbers that we have in the array, and they are properly arranged in the last two positions. No need to shuffle them again. So that's why we will reduce our search space. Next time we'll run up to here. We will not go like a fool. We will not search throughout. Okay? We know why we are doing that. So -7, 0, -3, -7, 0, -3, 1 and 15. This is our status after two iterations. Now the third iteration, what we do is that I is here, because first I was here, first iteration, second iteration, now I is here, third iteration. J again starts from 0. For every I, j starts from 0, right? That is the nature of nested loop. When j checks, okay, -7, 0, it's okay, -7 is less than 0. J increments. 0 is greater than -3, so order is broken. Since order is broken, let us swap them. So it becomes -3, it becomes 0. Now are you getting the intuition how it is working? Every time the maximum is shifting towards this side. Okay? It's just the reverse of what we did in selection sort. The minimum was gathering on the left hand side. Here the maximum numbers are gathering on the right hand side in a decreasing order, and that is what we want. Decreasing order from the right hand side means increasing order from the left hand side. Understand? You can just rewind this again and again, or you can just pause and understand what we are trying to say. That right hand side, if we keep on accumulating numbers in decreasing order, effectively we are making increasing order from the left hand side. Now j goes to here, and it says okay, 0 is less than 1, fine, no need to change. And while will we take j from up to here, we know that it is useless to go here, we will not find any discrepancy here, so this is extra task, useless. After third iteration our status is -7, -3, 0, 1 and 15. Okay. Now I goes to the, for the fourth iteration, 1, 2, 3, 4, I goes here. Okay, now after three iterations these three positions are fixed. We know that these are the final positions, so j will only go from here to here. So when j goes here, it sees that okay, -7 and -3 is okay, it is less than -3, fine. J goes here, and that's the final position. After that j will not go. Okay, So J at this position, we see that -3 0. Okay, it's nicely placed. -3 is less than 0. It's fine. So once we see that there are no swappings happening, that means we have already sorted the array. Okay, so why keep on running again and again? No need to run it for another time. No need to run it for I is equal to last value. We have got no swapping in this entire run. So break out from the loop. We have got the sorted array. Okay, so sometimes what happens that we are given the sorted array initially, and if we try to swap it, we are uselessly wasting our time. So to prevent such time wastage, for any iteration, if swap is 0, if number of swaps is 0, that means it is already sorted from that point of time. So breakout, okay, that is an optimization. So let us see how can we do it in our editor. Here we are with the program on bubble sort. We can clearly see there is an array of maximum size 100 or the capacity. N is the number of elements that we are going to take from the user. I and j are two iterator variables. Okay, swap is another variable that is going to help us in future in swapping two numbers. Let us start from the nest. So up to this portion we have taken only user input. Here we are running I from 0, not up to the last element but one before that. And why this -1? The reason behind that is, suppose we plug i's value here. Let us plug I is equal to n-1 here. What will happen? So if we write I is equal to n-1 and then we write j runs from 0 up to less than n minus I minus 1. Now put I is equal to n minus 1, what we get? We get j is less than n minus 1 minus 1. That means j is less than 0. If you calculate this, you get 0. So that means j is 0 and j is less than 0. So these two statements are contradictory. So to prevent such contradiction, we have taken this -1. So the reason for taking that -1 is understood. Now we try to understand the upper limit of j. Suppose I is 0, then j will run from 0, and as long as j is less than n minus 0 minus 1. So we are putting I is equal to 0 here. That means j will run less than n minus 1. Why so? Why are we not iterating up to the last element? Because if we go to the last element, then j plus 1 inside this nest will give us out of bounds, will take us out of the range of the array, and by doing so we will get some undefined behavior, we will get some abrupt values that we don't want during runtime. So to prevent such out of bound exception to occur, we have given this -1. So this is an important thing to note here. The second thing, why this -i? So what is the reason of giving this -i? Remember that in theory we have discussed the beauty of bubble sort gives us I number of sorted elements from the right hand side after I iterations. So after 2 iterations, I will get the last 2 elements already sorted in its own place. After 5 iterations, I will get 5 elements from the right hand side already sorted. So after any general ith iteration, I will get I elements from the right hand side automatically sorted. So why to run over them? That will be a redundant task. So to prevent this redundancy, we are running j not just less than n minus 1, but less than n minus I minus 1. Okay, this is an optimization. What are we doing inside the loops? We were checking for any discrepancies. So if there is any deviation from the natural ascending order, then we track that thing within this if statement and we swap the adjacent values so that any such discrepancy gets resolved. Okay, and that is done by swapping. This thing happens for all values of I and all values of j. After we come to the end of the nest, we have already sorted the array. So our task is done. Congratulations. We can now print the array, and let us try this program and test it. So we get 0 errors and 0 warnings. The number of elements, suppose 5 elements, we give -9, then 0, then again -3, and now suppose 30, then 40, and then 50. 5 elements, right? 1 2 3 4 5. This is the last element. So we get -9 -3 0 30 40, which is absolutely correct. Now just pause the video and think, can we improve this program? Can we improve this program further? If you found out what we are going to do, then congratulations. We are going to count the number of swappings, right? If the number of swapping at any stage is 0, that means the array is already sorted. So the future iterations will only waste our time. So we want to break out. So that is the situation that we are going to create by having a counter. Let us have a counter that refreshes for every ith iteration. So count becomes 0, and here inside this if statement we will increase the count plus plus. After the inner loop we check if count has become 0, that means if there has been no swap in this entire iteration of j, then break out. So just simply break out. That will tremendously reduce our calculations. Do you want to check it? To check it, we will keep another variable iter, or let us say iterations. So iterations is a variable that keeps track of the total number of times we are running. So we will count for every next iteration plus plus, right? Finally, we want to print the number of iterations. So let us print that. So it runs fine, and now we see that enter the number of elements. So now we enter 5 elements, enter 5 integers, 7, 9, -1, 0 and -15. So you get that the sorted array is in the proper order, and the total number of iteration is 10. If we enter a completely sorted array, then comes the fun. So this time we'll enter a completely sorted array of size, suppose 8. We write 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is a completely sorted array, and we will get back the same array. But just check that we have run only 7 times. This is the optimal number of time we can run. This number 7 indicates the number of times the j loop has run, and after running we have found 0 swaps, so we have broken out of the entire nest. If we remove this condition, then the number of iterations will be more or less. What do you guess? It should be more, right? Because we are not breaking out, so it is not an optimal situation. And we see that the total number of iterations is much more than that, 28 iterations. So that is the usefulness of having this small you can say modifications to the code to make it run better, to make it run lesser number of times. Let us try to find their time complexities. First for selection sort, and then for bubble sort. For selection sort, we run 2 loops. First one run from 0 to n minus 1, and the nested loop, the second one, it run from I plus 1 to n minus 1, right? The total number of iterations, how to count it? There is a formula for that. The formula is upper limit minus lower limit plus 1, as simple as that. So here upper limit is n minus 1, lower limit is 0 plus 1. This gives us 9. So this loop runs for n number of times. How many times does this loop run? Upper limit minus lower limit plus 1. If we simplify, we get n minus 1 minus I minus 1 plus 1. So it gives us n minus I minus 1. So the inner loop runs for n minus I minus 1 times. What is the worst number of times? That means what is the most number of times we run this loop? When I is 0, right? When I is 0, then we run it for n minus 1 times. So in the worst case scenario, that means the big O time complexity of selection sort will be n, and for each such n times we are running the loop n minus 1 times, right? So this is the time complexity, but we don't consider this constant because the order does not change with constants. Constant does not change the order. It is still a linear order, right? N minus 1, n minus 5, all these are linear order. So in general, n minus any constant k will not affect the order. It is still linear. So we can write it in better terms. It's O of n into n. That means it's O of n square. So big O of n square is the time complexity for selection sort. What is that for bubble sort? We ran the first loop from 0 to less than n minus 1. That means from 0 to n minus 2. And the inner loop ran from 0 to less than n minus I minus 1. That means from 0 to n minus I minus 2. Okay. The same formula, upper limit minus lower limit plus 1. So how many times does the first loop run? It runs from upper, that means n minus 2, minus lower means 0, minus 1 or plus 1. So n minus 1 times. N minus 1 times is the first loop running. The second loop runs from n minus 1 minus 2. This is the upper limit minus the lower limit plus 1. So it's n minus I minus 1. So the inner loop runs from n minus 1 minus I times. So if you multiply these two orders, so this is also linear order, this is big O of n, and this also, in the worst case, when I is 0, it will run from n minus 1 times, right, when I is 0. So this is also of the order of n. So bubble sort has a runtime complexity of n times into n times. That means O of n square. Having covered up to this point, I will advise you to take a short break and just recap whatever we have done from the beginning of this video. Since this session is getting quite longer, I have decided to break it into two parts so that we can discuss the remaining problems in part 2. So let's catch up in the next session.